Tonight, when you whisper a secret to someone across a crowded room, your throat will do something no other animal can do. You will shape air into meaning. But the real answer to how this happened is far stranger than you might think, and it starts with a skull found in a German cave in 1856. You have no idea how old this ability is. The fossil record gives you almost nothing to work with. There are no preserved vocal cords from early humans. No recordings of the first words ever spoken. So, for over a century, scientists treated the origin of speech like an unsolvable mystery. They argued in circles. They made guesses. And then, about 10 years ago, everything changed. A team of researchers in Germany did something nobody had done before. They took CT scans of 3 Neanderthal hyoid bones, tiny U-shaped bones in the throat that anchor the tongue and support the larynx. And what they found was impossible. The Neanderthal hyoid was virtually identical to yours. This single bone told the story in 3 dimensions. It meant Neanderthals had the same vocal tract capacity as modern humans. They could produce the same range of vowels. They could, in principle, have spoken with full grammatical complexity. The discovery was published in 2016 by David Lordkipanidze and his team at the Max Planck Institute. And it shattered a comfortable assumption. That speech came late to the human family tree. But here is the twist. The hyoid bone is not the whole story, because your ancestors had the hardware for speech long before they had the software. And that gap, that million-year chasm between having the ability to speak and actually speaking, is where the real mystery lies. So, when did you first use words? To answer that, you have to go back further than Neanderthals. You have to go back to a time when your ancestors were still climbing trees. Around 6 million years ago, the first hominins split from the lineage that would become chimpanzees. For millions of years, they walked on 2 legs, their hands freed up. Their brains grew slowly, inch by inch, generation by generation. But their throats stayed high. Their vocal range stayed narrow. They could alarm call. They could grunt. But they could not shape language. Then, something happened around 2 million years ago. Homo erectus appeared. And with them, the archaeological record begins to whisper. Stone tools get more complex. Fire gets controlled. Small campsites appear in places like Zhoukoudian in China and Jesher Benat Yaakov in Israel. But none of these leave behind a transcript. None of them tell you whether the humans who made them were talking to each other. The first hard evidence of language, real language, comes from a place you have probably never heard of. Blombos Cave, on the southern coast of South Africa. And the evidence is not a bone. It is a rock. In 2011, a team led by Christopher Henshilwood at the University of Bergen found a small silkrete flake dating to about 73,000 years ago. On its surface, someone had drawn a crosshatch pattern with an ochre crayon. 6 individual strokes intersecting, deliberate, not accidental, not decorative in a trivial sense. This was a symbol, and symbols require something you cannot live without, a shared code, a language. You cannot draw a crosshatch and expect anyone to understand it unless you already share a system of meaning. That means the person who made that mark had a partner who could interpret it, which means they were speaking. But 73,000 years ago is not the beginning. It is just the oldest signature you have found so far, because linguists keep pushing the date further back and they keep running into a wall. The word for mother turns out to be remarkably conserved across languages, not identical but recognizable. In some African Khoisan languages, it sounds like mama. In others, it shifts slightly. But the core, a bilabial consonant followed by an open vowel, persists. Linguist Quentin Atkinson at the University of Auckland ran statistical models across 2,071 modern languages and found something startling. The further a language's origin point was from East Africa, the less phonemic inventory it contained. Fewer consonants, fewer distinct sounds. The data suggested that all human languages trace back to a single population that left Africa roughly 50,000 to 70,000 years ago. And that population carried a language that was already fully formed, which raises the question, where did that language come from? No one knows for sure. But there is a theory that has gained enormous traction in the last decade. It is called the gestural origins hypothesis, and it was championed most forcefully by Derek Bykirton, a linguist who spent his career studying how languages emerge from scratch. His argument was simple and devastating. He looked at sign languages, not constructed ones, but the natural sign languages that deaf communities create when they are isolated from hearing populations. In Peru, in Nicaragua, in remote villages around the world, deaf children have independently invented full grammatical sign languages from nothing. No one taught them. No one modeled them. They built syntax from gesture. By Curtin's point was that human speech did the same thing, but millions of years earlier. Your ancestors started with gesture, pointing, imitation, shared attention, and over vast stretches of time, those gestural sequences got compressed, automated, and transferred into the vocal tract. The brain regions that control hand movement and the brain regions that control speech are neighbors. They share wiring. Broca's area, the part of your brain responsible for grammar and speech production, also lights up when you watch someone perform a complex physical action. Your brain never fully separated gesture from language. It folded them together. But then there is the most provocative finding of all, and it comes from a place that should not have human remains at all. Dmanisi, Georgia, a site that dates to 1.8 million years ago. 5 skulls were found there, belonging to Homo erectus or a closely related species. And among those skulls was one with a remarkably intact brain case. In 2022, a team including Marcia Ponce de Leon and Christoph Zollikofer at the University of Zurich reconstructed that brain in 3D. They looked at the endocast, the impression of the brain's surface preserved inside the skull, and they found something that should not have been there. A Broca's area, not a fully developed one, not identical to yours, but clearly present. This means the neural hardware for syntax, for putting words in order, for understanding that mother hit child is different from child hit mother, existed 1.8 million years ago. A million years before the Blombos Cave drawing. A million years before the Neanderthal hyoid was even born. So, why didn't they speak? Maybe they did. Maybe the soft tissue evidence is just too fragile to survive. Your throat is made of cartilage and muscle. It rots. It disappears. What remains is bone, and bone lies. A hyoid bone tells you about capacity, not behavior. A skull tells you about potential, not practice. You could have the tools and never use them. This is the uncomfortable truth at the center of everything. The first human speech was not a moment, it was not an invention. It was a slow, invisible gradient. Every generation, a small shift, a longer call, a finer distinction between two sounds. A child who imitated a parent's gesture one fraction more accurately. Over hundreds of thousands of years, those micro-changes accumulated until one day, and no one can say which day, someone opened their mouth and said something that had never been said before, and the person listening understood it. That moment changed everything. Because once you can transmit an idea without being present to demonstrate it, knowledge stops being local. It stops being lost when an individual dies. It compounds. The next generation inherits not just what they learned by touching, but what they were told. Tools get better. Strategies get sharper. The world gets smaller and it gets more survivable. You are standing on the far side of that gradient. Every word you have ever spoken was passed down through an unbroken chain of roughly 8 million human throats. Each one worked. Each one transmitted. Each one survived. Tonight, when you whisper a secret to someone across a crowded room, your throat will do something no other animal can do. You will shape air into meaning. And somewhere, deep in your brain, a region named after a 19th century French surgeon will fire, the same region that fired in a Dmanisi skull 1.8 million years ago, reminding you that you are not just speaking. You are echoing.